Hi, I'm Isaac, a security engineer here at Paramify. As one of the first 3 companies doing FedRAMP 20x Phase 2, I'm excited to show you in this video how Paramify is approaching FedRAMP 20x. So the first thing you'll notice when you create a 20x program in Paramify is that we've brought in the KSIs, or Key Security Indicators, which is the requirements from FedRAMP that you need to meet in order to get authorized in FedRAMP 20x. To begin with these KSIs, the first thing that Paramify will have you do is put in the tools, technology, and process that you already have in place at your organization to manage risk. We organize this in what's called stacks. So each stack is meant to model the organization that you already have in place at your business. We can group stacks based on the way that you naturally are structured at your company. And we'll ask you questions about how you're managing risk. This includes where you're hosted in terms of your data center. For us at Paramify, we're based in AWS GovCloud. That's where our data lives. And so we would select AWS GovCloud, which is a FedRAMP high authorized system. But this goes deeper than just looking at where you're storing your data. We'll also ask you questions about things like your identity management, about your network endpoint security, about your cryptographic module review process. We'll get into the details about the things that you're doing today to manage risk. If you have any gaps or things that you're not doing today that FedRAMP requires you to do, those gaps will become clear and you can make a plan for how to implement more security in order to meet FedRAMP 20x. The next thing that we'll do is we will create what we call risk solutions, which is looking at all the different risks posed to your system across different categories like facilities, InfoSec, and organizational risk. And we'll help you understand the solution capabilities that you have in place to meet these risks. The most important thing for FedRAMP 20x, though, is showing that what you say you do is what you actually do. And that gets us into evidence. So evidence in Paramify is grouped into sets. An evidence set is just a similar process that runs again and again to show evidence that you are implementing security. Let's look at this example evidence set of AWS component SSL enforcement status. In this example, we have a script that's available publicly on our GitHub. All of our evidence scripts we make open source and available to the public on GitHub. So feel free to use them as you do FedRAMP 20x. This script does 2 things. The first thing it does is it's going to list our S3 buckets, and it's going to then look at the bucket policy to see if we're enforcing security properly. Then it's going to look at our databases, and it's going to see how many databases we have and whether those are enforcing security properly. When the script runs, it will create a JSON file that has all the details straight from AWS about whether our security is working properly. These files can be brought in through an API into Paramify. Here I'll just drag and drop. The artifact, as soon as it comes into Paramify, will be assessed based on rules that have been configured in Paramify. We call these validators. So the status can be either a pass, a partial, or a fail, based on the result of each validator. And these validators run as soon as an artifact comes into Paramify. What's important for FedRAMP 20x is that the validators are very transparent, as the auditor and government agencies need to understand how you're arriving at the passing, failing, or partial status. Let's look at this example and see why it might be failing. If we come into our validators, let's open up the S3 validator, and I'll pull up that example artifact that we used. What you can see here is we are pulling directly out of our US Gov region. And this is listing all the buckets that we have in our system. If we come down to the bottom, we can see exactly where the validator is matching on data from the evidence file. And we can see that while we have 30 total S3 buckets, only 10 of those buckets were reported as having SSL enforced. This is why the validator is failing. This kind of transparency is necessary for FedRAMP 20x because you need to be able to show exactly why you're arriving at a pass or a failing criteria. The validators and evidence can be then associated with the requirements or KSIs that are given, as well as the solution capabilities that we discussed previously. This helps ensure that what you've said you're doing for security is what you're actually doing. And all of these evidence and requirements can be reviewed by an auditor, which is required for FedRAMP 20x. So within assessments, you can invite your auditor into your Paramify workspace. They'll be able to see all the requirements, as well as the evidence that you've associated and the current passing, failing, or partial status. From there, the auditors will be able to review the files and then leave comments about the security of your system and their assessment. Then all of this can be bundled up into a machine-readable file that can be generated by Paramify. This machine-readable file export is important because FedRAMP requires for 20x that you have a FedRAMP Trust Center, where you can continually update the security of your system based on a machine-readable format. The Paramify Trust Center can take in 20x machine-readable files and show your status of controls and the processes and technology that you're using to manage risk. This gives a transparent and consistent way for you to demonstrate that your system is up to the security standards of FedRAMP 20x. Now, once you've done all this work in Paramify to show that you're meeting the security standards, it's not lost work if you decide to do something other than FedRAMP 20x. In Paramify, we support many programs, including CMMC, Department of Defense, FedRAMP Rev 5, SOC 2, and other control frameworks. So whatever you decide to go show that you're meeting security for, we can help you. If you have questions on this or how the Paramify platform can help you get FedRAMP 20x authorized, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you and let you know more about how our system works.